Hey battle buddies and healthy heroes, my name is Susie, just an enthusiastic nerd with LARP and fitness content for you. Happy spring, it is time to do our annual spring drills. I am here with my buddy Ed. This is Sensei Ed. He is a 5th degree black belt. And I have something to tell you guys. I have been trying to learn more about how to throw a windmill strike for a long time. I learned from like the best boffer fighter I know, one of the highest level characters I know, and it wasn't until this guy and his martial arts technique showed up and taught me more about the body mechanics, and I think I finally have it figured out. We are going to learn about the mechanics of a windmill strike, what works and what doesn't work. We are going to learn about target options, strike locations, because I have 4 different ideas for a windmill strike. And then we're going to talk a little bit about different positioning and approaches for how you might use it in a workout if you're going to just do some cardio and some buffer drills for exercise versus what is practical in battle. And that's where Ed also has a lot of insight for us. He's going to tell us a lot about approach and perspective and positioning. So without further ado, let's get to it. So what I have learned is that a windmill strike is primarily a defensive thing. It's mostly about getting out of the way. If you can move fast enough, you avoid that counterattack that someone's going to want to throw at you. Because when you extend your arm, you are more exposed, but if you can pull your arm back fast enough, oh, what are you going to do? I have tried to explore things about locking your elbow and dropping your hand and pulling back your shoulder. None of those cues fully clicked for me, and maybe it's going to be helpful for some people. It is definitely not a wrap shot, which I use as a standard shot. You're not doing wrist twisting and blade finagling to get in there. You are just dropping, chopping straight down, getting that juicy exposed forearm, and then you are pulling back. And maybe some people need to think about their shoulder when they pull back, but every time I tried to think about wrist or elbow or shoulder, it wasn't working for me. The magic happened when Ed was like, this is defensive, pull off of your hip. So, how I do a windmill strike, you don't move your elbow very much. You drop your hand straight down. Your shoulder does come back, but all I think about is hip and butt. And when I pull that back, it gets me out of the way faster. All right? So now, there are 4 different spots that I like to try to hit. If you've got a partner, they can sort of square up with you and you can sort of angle off of them. Or if you've got a pile of pillows that I use for a rappel, try to get those pillows that have the arms, the like husband pillows, and then you can hit at their arms. Something I recently figured out with Ed is that the difference between a strike that feels really poor in regards to range, like I'm way overextended, I'm hitting above his elbow, versus a strike that is the sweet spot right above the wrist, that still counts. Like, it looks like you're hitting really different and your range is out of control, but that degree of control is so slight. It's so small on your hips and on where your posture is that if you are not 100% in your favorite spot, just do the same strike a bunch of times in a row and see how small the adjustment is. Like if I'm hitting his shoulder or his elbow versus if I'm hitting that forearm spot, it's a really slight adjustment. So my rule for these locations is always start with a regular stance, matching your foot forward and the striking arm. You can hit straight across from you on the outside and pull back off of that. Or you could cross your opponent and hit the opposite arm on the inside of the forearm. We have the outside straight across. We have the inside cross your body. And then we can talk about the other 2 strike options with a windmill, which are going to be less common, less practical. It's if you're going to use your offhand, your short sword for a windmill. You can, again, line up in regular stance, so your same striking foot is forward. You can windmill straight across on the same side, outside of their forearm, or the least likely option, if I somehow find myself too close and need to get away, I could cross his body and windmill off of the inside from my short sword. So let's review really quick. 4 locations. I'm gonna match my stance. I will either go straight across, same side, on the outside of his blade, or I will cross his body, and go inside on his opposite arm. Inside the forearm or outside the forearm. And then same thing with your other hand. I will either go straight across outside his blade on that forearm, or I will cross his body, get inside his forearm on the other blade. My four locations. Something I love about drills is when you combine them to make a workout, a cardio buffer workout. So how is that gonna look when we're using our new Windmill Strike? We're gonna take 4 locations and alternate them. I'm gonna show you with my buddy Ed, who is going to pretend to be a pile of pillows, right? So for for a workout, you don't need a partner, you don't need to spar with somebody, you don't need the dynamic motion, you just have a target Pel and you are drilling to get your heart pumping to do cardio work. I'm just gonna say center. You're a very convincing pile of pillows. How I would do this to loop it into a workout is to set up forward, do outside, and then I would do shuffle over, outside, shuffle over, outside. There you go, finally get some contact. Outside, outside, outside. And I would do that for probably one of my intervals. And then when I loop it around for my next interval, I would still keep my striking foot forward, and I would be doing an inside and a switch, and an inside, switch, inside, switch, inside. And as I pull my hip back, that sets me up for the next one. So an interval, you might end up needing to do a little scooch forward to work on your range. And if you're doing outside, I am doing big lunges. I'm doing a shuffle over, shuffle over, shuffle over. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Ed has got some insight about sparring and battlefield positioning and approach and perspective. It's so cool. It has me wanting to like redo my whole triangle waltz because of the way I lunge over. But check it out. Gonna take what I drilled in my workout and actually make it apply on a battlefield when you're against a dynamic person.
Okay, so I love the lunge. I love the shuffle. We shuffle the exact same way in karate.
Yeah.
What I would do, and this is more about angle than performance. So that big shuffle across from the outside, one side of the body to the other outside of the body, fantastic workout. But combat situation, it's big, it's easy to see. So you'd have a very hard time going from this side to targeting the opposite of my other outside. So what I would do differently when I had an opponent or a partner, however you want to think of it, is you
a monster, if you will. Goblins, you know.
You have 2 lines to work with now. So there is your center line that you were imagining when you did the drill.
Off your belly button, like your center mass that you're lunging back and forth from.
That's how you change sides. When you have an opponent, you have 2 lines, the line of my first weapon and my second.
Okay.
So, whichever one you want to shoot for, you would use that as your line. So outside to inside, or if you're swapped, inside.
So now this is my center line. I'm not centered and lunging.
Not on my body.
My opponent, I'm squaring up off of your blade.
Yes.
And then I can swap inside.
Now there you are. Once you finish your windmill, you are already on my outside.
Yeah.
So making a big motion may not pay off, especially against a fear flincher.
Yeah.
You could run into something that you might not have run into otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So
I remember also when I was first talking to you about how big these lunges are for my workouts and my triangle waltz, the line you gave me, that is far too much energy to expend for something that you can't hide, right? And that's a telegraphing thing. I absolutely, it's, you know, not only do you telegraph based on where you're looking, but you telegraph based on how your body's moving. Like, just think about that. When you are working out, you want to be expending the energy. You're like, I would like to get my blood flowing. I want to get stronger. I want to have the ability to do larger lateral lunges, faster sweeps and stuff like that. But on a battlefield, that's too much energy for something that will telegraph to your opponent. It's too much energy for something that you can't even hide. It's not going to be as effective. You're going to want to do smaller motions, more precise setups, and then swing from there. Very cool. That's awesome. Thank you.
What?
High five. Whoop, pow!